So hi there, my name is Carrie Ward and I am Director of Fostering Success Michigan, which is a statewide initiative focused on post-secondary access and success for youth with experience in foster care. In my role, I convene the 30 campus support programs across the state of Michigan to collaborate, problem solve, and share best practices. And we had a convening yesterday where issue came up and just wanted to share that issue and some potential solutions for that issue. So one of the things that my coaches across the state are kind of struggling with are the idea of coaching students through mandatory vaccinations. So in Michigan, many of our campuses are requiring vaccinations, and this is really impactful for those students who are depending on campus housing, but also impacting students who are of color as they struggle with maybe trusting the medical professionals or institutions that understandably. And so as my coaches spoke about this issue, there was a real balance or a real need for balance between self-determination and supporting university policy. So one of the things that I did was reached out to a national network that I'm part of called the Fostering Academic Achievement Nationwide, so FAN network, to ask them if other states were maybe struggling with the same challenge and if they had any recommendations of how to address this issue. And my dear friend and colleague, Sam from Arizona, reached out with a really great story about an example that he used with someone that he knew. And I wanted to just take a minute to highlight that and share that with everybody. Sam Garman is part of Bridging Success Project Coordinator with Maricopa County Community College in Arizona. And Sam's also an associate trainer for the Fostering Success Coaching Institute, which is part of our Michigan model. All of our campus coaches are trained in this model. So if you'd like to learn more about that particular model, please feel free to visit their website, Fostering Success Coaching Institute. No, it's fosteringsuccesscoaching.com. Yep. So welcome, Sam, and thank you so much for being willing to share your guidance, not only with my network, but with hopefully other states that also might find this really useful. So I sent the email out and Sam texted me and said, we should just talk on the phone. And so what did you say to me, or give us the background?
Well, so thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this because I do think that using our coaching skills and our coaching practice in these new ways sometimes feels like, oh, wow, I'm stretching a muscle that I haven't stretched before. But the reality is that our coaching practice actually really serves us here. And so in Arizona, if you're not following the news in Arizona, which if you're in Michigan, you probably wouldn't be, but we don't have, we're not even allowed to have mask mandates in our schools. It's against the law to require vaccinations. And so here we're not working against that. But we're often here, we have a lot of misinformation happening. The misinformation machine is real effective here. And so I was actually the other day at my barber shop, and my barber was telling me, and I walked in and she wasn't wearing a mask. And so I was like, oh, how did where did you get your vaccine? How did it go? Just having a conversation. And she said, oh, I haven't gotten my vaccine. And I will tell you that my first instinct was to be like, what on earth are you doing? You are working with the public every day. The Delta variant is surging. I know you have 2 young kids. What happens if you're on a ventilator? You're going to lose all your money in your house. I mean, I immediately wanted to be like, what's wrong? You have to get vaccinated, and just yell at her. But I had just done some coaching work with a student. And so I was really in coach mode, which worked out really well for me. Because instead of saying all of those things I wanted to say, what I actually said was, yeah, it is really confusing to try and figure out what's the deal with this vaccine. I can tell that you have a lot of questions. And she said, yes, I am really frustrated because I have a lot of questions and I think they're really good questions. And I feel really uncomfortable with this vaccine and how it was developed, but everyone just keeps yelling at me and telling me to get it, and no one will answer my questions. So suddenly we're having a conversation. And I will tell you that we would not have been having a conversation if I had just gone this other route. Like if I had been the judgy jerk that I was about to show up as, there's no way she would have said that to me. And so the first thing I'll say, and this is really hard in this instance especially, but we have to meet people with empathy. And so things like for our students, things like I understand that the medical system can feel really scary or can feel like something that is not trustworthy. It makes sense to feel nervous about a vaccine when you've never seen in your lifetime a vaccine be developed in this way. It makes sense to feel confused when there is so much misinformation and people that hold public office on both sides are saying things that don't appear to be based on facts. It makes sense to not know who to ask when there have been all of these people who have said, well, all these doctors think this and all these doctors think that, and everything is just kind of like a mess of information. So that's the first thing, is meeting students with empathy and reflecting back their feelings to them. I can tell that you're really scared. It's really hard to make a decision when you feel like everyone is just yelling at you or telling you what to do. I can tell that you're really frustrated. This is a really frustrating experience. It must be so hard to think about having your college experience cut off because of a vaccine that you don't believe in. So start there, because when you start there, then you can have a conversation. So I met my barber with this like empathy and said like, yeah, it's really confusing. And it sounds like you have some real questions that nobody is answering for you. And she was like, yes, I have these questions. And I didn't have the answers to the questions because I am not a virologist. As it turns out, I have no master's in public health. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a dude. So I was like, okay. And I said, well, surely there must be someone who has some understanding who could answer these questions for you. And she was like, yeah, I just can't figure out who I should be listening to or who I should be talking to. And it's a barbershop. So I had about 20 minutes with her. And then she was done and she took the cape off. And I was like, well, see you later. And I walked out of the barbershop going, well, shoot. now I feel like I've signed myself up for a thing. And so I went to Twitter, as I often do, and said, hey, does anyone in Arizona know someone who's an expert on these things who would be willing to meet someone with compassion and empathy about her concerns and experiences? And one of my mutuals on Twitter messaged me and said, hey, my husband is an ICU doctor. He's Latino. My barber is also Latino. He's Latino. He's run 2 COVID ICUs. He's done research on all the vaccines. And she like listed all of these credentials. And she said he's this really compassionate and kind guy, and everyone just calls him Dr. G. He's like this real down to earth guy. He would be more than happy to chat with her and like really just hash it out and have a conversation. So I messaged her and I said, listen, I just kept thinking about our conversation and how frustrating it must be not to be able to get information. I think I have a resource for you. This guy's name is Dr. G. He's a real cool guy. He's really chill. And he is more than willing to answer your questions with real facts about what's really happening. And he's not going to just yell at you and tell you what to do. And then yesterday, she sent me a message of her vaccine cards and her 2 sons' vaccine cards, and said, hey, I just want you to know we got vaccinated. And so I just replied with like, I'm so excited. I've been so worried about you and your family. I'm really glad to hear that. And she said, it was just such a hard decision, but I'm glad I made it. And I said, you really deserve to have someone listen to you and try and help you figure out what the questions were. And she said, and I think this is the key, you were the only one that was willing to do that. And so the thing is, that's not about me. That's about coaching. And being in the role of coaching is allowing someone else to be the experience and sort of be the driver of their own experience while also coming along and using our effective questions to figure out what's going on. And I think that's something you and I talked about yesterday, Carrie, is that, our students are going to be having a variety of different experiences, right? So you talked about there might be some students of color who have some distrust of the medical system in general. I've seen on Twitter all over the place, people are talking about the Tuskegee experiment and why that is causing students of color and young people of color to be distrustful about a vaccine like this. There's also the reality that there is decreased access to vaccines in communities of color and in low income communities and in already marginalized communities. And so it's like, oh, go to the rich side of town to go get your vaccine, which is a crappy setup. And so thinking about like the using our effective questions is the key here to figure out where's the gap. So for me, when I was talking to my barber, the gap there was I can't get anyone to answer my questions. And so what she needed was knowledge from someone who is a trusted source. But what she could have needed was awareness about what was happening with COVID ICUs, or she could have needed awareness around the impact of the Delta variant on kids. So I'm a parent, I have little ones at home, and the Delta variant is real scary because the impact on kids is different than any of the variants we've seen before. It could have been that she needed a skill around like, I've been trying to figure out how to get a vaccine, but the website confused me and like, meh, I just gave up on it. And so part of coaching is utilizing our effective questions to figure out where the gap is. So if a student comes to me and says like, well, they're gonna just shoot me up with a virus because I'm Latino or because I'm Black, that is a real and legitimate fear. And so how can I, as a coach, get them to a place where there is knowledge from someone who looks like them? And that is something that I think is hard to get our minds around. So if you're a person who has skin that looks like mine, we've never been trained to be scared of the medical system.
Right.
That's not our deal. Like, Carrie, if you tell me that you're having weird symptoms, I'm going to be like, well, have you gone to your doctor? That's the first thing you should do.
Right.
Whereas if we say that to one of our students of color, they're going to be like, no.
Right.
There might be a financial question about that. There might be access to a good doctor that's a question. So do each of the coaches or coaching networks, can you share access to a medical professional who is Black or Latinx, who is willing to talk to students, whether it's one-on-one or whether you could record a conversation like this with them? Is there a Black TikTok or content provider who you could share a message with? Think about those kind of things where when we're dispelling myths, it can't just be me or you, Carrie, right, that's having this conversation. And it can't be our white coaches either. Right. Our white coaches are going to be part of it for sure. But what we want to do is link in other trusted members of community where we can actually move the needle on this thing. Did you have any questions from that? I feel I said a lot, but I don't know if I said all the things you and I covered yesterday.
It was great. So these are the things that I heard you say. So the first thing I heard you say was, when approaching a situation like this with a student, number one, don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions about why they are not willing or not interested in getting the vaccine. You're going to have to ask more questions. So don't assume. Number two, meet with empathy and reframe. So that sounds really frustrating. It's really hard to make a decision when everybody's yelling at you and telling you what you have to do, right? That's not a good way to start a conversation. Because you might be the only person that's actually willing to stop and listen and not make assumptions and listen with empathy. And then I heard you say, determine the needs. So there must be somebody that can help, right? And also assessing what those needs are. Do they need a skill? Do they need knowledge or information from a trusted source? And then finally, building skills to meet those needs. So supporting our students with that next step. So whether that's linking them with somebody who looks like them and is able to provide information, or helping them problem solve through getting the vaccine, or helping them work through their fears related to the vaccine. those are all the components that I pulled out from what you said. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, I think you really grabbed it. And those things are all like classic coaching things, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do as coaches every day. And I think the place where we can get stuck is thinking like, oh, this is a public health crisis. There's something different that needs to happen here. Or we get ahead of ourselves with our own fear. And this whole pandemic has been really mired in fear and fear mongering, right? So my response to her was about to be one of fear. You're not wearing a mask around me, and the Delta variant is surging. What is wrong with you?
Right.
And letting that fear be the driver of our conversation wouldn't have moved the needle. But letting our curiosity as coaches, letting our effective questions, letting our relationship drive the conversation, that changes the game. And I think that really can make a difference. And I feel really great about 3 more people in Arizona who are vaccinated. That feels really incredible. And obviously, I can't take all of the credit there, but it does feel like, wow, I made a positive impact. And I know that coaching can do that for other people. So I'm really hopeful that this was really helpful for some of your coaches. And I'm always more than happy to answer any questions or anything else that comes up for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think too, I just kind of want to give a one-liner, an advocacy one-liner to people who are within institutions who are creating these policies. Like, I think that all of us in higher education understand the importance of keeping our students safe, but I think that there is also room to look at the various impacts of these policies based on our conversation today. I know that there are students with experience in foster care who are stopping out of classes because a couple of institutions in Michigan specifically are requiring students who are virtual, out of state, attending in person, in housing. I mean, all of the students are required to get a vaccine, and it's impacting their educational trajectory, and they don't need another hoop to jump through. So thank you so much, Sam, for your time. I really appreciate it. I want to mention again the Fostering Success Coaching Institute. If anybody is interested in learning more about the coaching model, again, it's something that in Michigan, I encourage all of my campus coaches to attend. And you can find out more about that at fosteringsuccesscoaching.com. If you'd like to learn more about Fostering Success Michigan, my organization, please feel free to visit our website at fosteringsuccessmichigan.com. Thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.